To Kill a Mockingbird Chapter 2. September arrives and Dill leaves Maycomb to return to the town of Meridian. Scout, meanwhile, prepares to go to school for the first time, an event that she has been eagerly anticipating. Once she is finally at school, however, she finds that her teacher, Miss Caroline Fisher, deals poorly with children. When Miss Caroline concludes that Atticus must have taught Scout to read, she becomes very displeased and makes Scout feel guilty for being educated. At recess, Scout complains to Jim, but Jim says that Miss Caroline is just trying out a new method of teaching. I would like to direct you to page 21 in the book. When Scout describes Miss Caroline, she says that she is no more than 21. She had bright auburn hair, pink cheeks, and wore crimson fingernail polish. She also wore high-heeled pumps and a red and white striped dress. She looked and smelled like a peppermint drop. While Miss Caroline's appearance seems very pleasing to Scout, Miss Caroline's attitude is not. She reprimands Scout, saying that your father does not know how to teach. Because her father had been teaching her to read, Miss Caroline has a very specific way of which she would like to teach the children how to read, and by Scout learning how to read, she has kind of ruined this for Miss Caroline. So already she gets off to a bad start. As well, Miss Caroline and Scout get along badly in the afternoon. Walter Cunningham, a boy in Scout's class, has not brought a lunch. Miss Caroline offers him a quarter to buy lunch, telling him that he can pay her back tomorrow. Walter's family is large and poor, so poor that they pay Atticus with hickory nuts, turnip greens, and other goods when they need legal help, and Walter will not be able to pay the teacher back or bring a lunch to school. When Scout attempts to explain these circumstances, however, Miss Caroline fails to understand and grows so frustrated that she slaps Scout's hand with a ruler. As Scout says in Chapter 2, everybody knows that the Cunninghams don't take anything from anybody. They are just that family. They know they cannot pay it back, so they will not take it. She tries to explain this to Miss Caroline, who's not from the small town, and Miss Caroline reprimands her. Jean Louise, I've had enough of you this morning on page 28, she said. You're starting off on the wrong foot in every way, my dear. Hold out your hand. Now, hitting a child with a ruler in those days would have been considered pretty commonplace. Corporal punishment, of course, still exists in some forms today in some states. And so Miss Caroline would not be in the wrong there in doing that. But of course, Scout's first day of school and first experience with school is not one of happiness and one that she would like to continue. A quick note about the end of Chapter 2, when Scout says that as the bell rings for lunch and she files out, Miss Caroline watches them. She says, as I was the last to leave, I saw her sink down into her chair and bury her head in her arms. Had her conduct been more friendly toward me, I would have felt sorry for her. She was a pretty little thing, on page 29. Now, this is indirect characterization of Miss Caroline. As she sinks down into her chair and buries her head in her arms, we can tell that Miss Caroline is having a rough first day of school as well as Scout is. So in that way, they are foils of each other. But Miss Caroline is obviously a young, new teacher. She's just coming into her career and figuring out herself, and I think that's very indicative of Miss Caroline's feelings on how her first day of school went.